My name is Diego. I am a storyteller, and I find myself at the crossroads of betrayal and rebirth. When my wife, Amanda, left me for a man named Joshua, a wealthier figure who could offer her a lavish lifestyle, my heart shattered. The betrayal cut deeper than I had anticipated. I thought our love was unbreakable, yet it twisted into something unrecognizable. I was lost in a fog of despair, but from that darkness emerged a flicker of determination. I decided to start my own company, pouring my pain into every project. As I grew this new venture, the universe conspired in strange ways. In a moment of irony, I hired Joshua as my assistant, a decision that some deemed reckless. Every day, I confronted the man who had taken my wife, often feeling the weight of unspoken tension. Yet, in this challenge, I found unexpected strength. I learned to channel my emotions into creativity and ambition, refusing to be defined by my loss. Through this process, I rediscovered my passion and purpose, transforming betrayal into a catalyst for growth. I began to understand that sometimes a broken heart is merely a step toward a brighter, unexpected future. On a chilly November morning, I found myself enveloped in a haze of memories and unresolved emotions as I recounted the story of my life. My name is Diego, and the tale I share is one of betrayal and unexpected rebirth. At the center of this story were three characters: Joseph, Amanda, and Joshua. Joseph was my closest friend, a steadfast companion who often offered wisdom when I needed it most. Amanda was my wife, the love of my life, or so I thought. Joshua was the man who would become the catalyst for my transformation, the man who stole Amanda's heart with promises of wealth and adventure. My heart had been shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, our 10-year anniversary. I had planned a surprise getaway, a weekend filled with laughter, love, and cherished memories. I woke early, the excitement bubbling within me as I prepared a special breakfast for Amanda. The smell of pancakes and fresh coffee filled the air, and I envisioned her smile as she walked into the kitchen. But as I flipped the last pancake, a knot of unease began to settle in my stomach. My younger brother, Ryan, had been sending me unsettling messages throughout the week, hinting at something amiss. I brushed it off initially, believing that my brother was simply being overprotective. But as I stood there, pouring syrup over the golden pancakes, doubts crept in. I remembered the last few months, the late nights Amanda had spent working, and the distant look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. As I prepared for the day, I tried to shake off the feeling of dread. I chose her favorite outfit, laid it out on the bed, and made sure everything was perfect. Yet the whispers of discontent grew louder. At work, I overheard rumors circulating about Amanda being seen with another man, and the weight of those words crushed my heart. I felt my excitement turn to anxiety, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the precipice of something terrible. Finally, I could no longer ignore the gnawing doubt. I waited for Amanda to come home, my heart racing with every passing minute. When she finally walked through the door, her smile felt forced, and I could sense the tension in the air. I gathered my thoughts, steeling myself for what I needed to do. "Amanda," I said, my voice trembling, "I found something in your purse." I pulled out the keychain, a small trinket that didn't belong to me. "Can you explain this?" Her expression shifted, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "Diego, Just tell me the truth," I interrupted, my heart pounding in my chest. "Are you seeing someone else?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the struggle within her, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Yes, I am," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Joshua. He can offer me things you can't." The words pierced through me like a dagger. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. the very foundation of my life crumbling. "But we had plans, Amanda. We were supposed to celebrate our love today." My voice cracked, the pain spilling over. I know," she replied, tears welling in her eyes. "But I felt so lonely. I wanted excitement, something different." Her confession unleashed a torrent of emotions within me. Anger, sadness, betrayal. It felt as if my heart was being ripped from my chest. The anniversary celebration I had envisioned transformed into a painful confrontation. We stood there, surrounded by memories of our decade together, yet all I could feel was the weight of her betrayal. I contemplated the future of our marriage, wondering if there was any way to rebuild what had been lost. In the days that followed, I was engulfed in despair. I reached out to Joseph, seeking his guidance. "What do I do, man?" I asked, my voice heavy with sorrow. "I feel like I've lost everything." Joseph listened patiently, offering support and perspective. "You need to focus on yourself, Diego. Channel this pain into something productive. Don't let her choices define you." His words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of determination within me. That's when I made the decision to start my own company. I poured every ounce of pain into my work, using it as fuel to drive my ambition. I envisioned a future where I could reclaim my identity, separate from the shadows of Amanda's betrayal. In a twist of fate, as I began to build my new venture, I found myself in a situation I never expected. I needed an assistant, someone reliable and efficient to help me navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship. That's when I made the audacious choice to hire Joshua. Working alongside the man who had taken my wife was a daily confrontation. The tension in the office was palpable, but in that discomfort, I found unexpected strength. Every time I faced him, I reminded myself of my purpose: to rise above the pain and prove to myself that I was more than my heartbreak. Through this journey, I began to rediscover my passion and purpose. I learned to channel my emotions into creativity, transforming betrayal into a catalyst for growth. I realized that sometimes a broken heart is merely a step toward a brighter, unexpected future. As I navigated the complexities of my new life, I found solace in the idea that I could rebuild not just my career, but also my sense of self. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to forge a path forward, one that would lead me to a place of healing and empowerment. On a chilly November morning, I found myself engulfed in memories that clung to me like shadows. My name is Diego, and this tale of betrayal and unexpected rebirth revolves around three pivotal characters: Joseph, Amanda, and Joshua. Joseph was my closest friend, a source of wisdom during my darkest moments. Amanda, my wife, was the love of my life, or so I believed. And Joshua, the man who would become the catalyst for my transformation, was the one who stole Amanda's heart with promises of wealth and adventure. That morning was supposed to Diego a celebration, our 10-year anniversary. I had planned a surprise getaway, envisioning a weekend filled with laughter, love, and cherished memories. I woke early, excitement bubbling within me as I prepared a special breakfast for Amanda. The aroma of pancakes and fresh coffee wafted through the air, and I could picture her smile as she entered the kitchen. But as I flipped the last pancake, a knot of unease settled in my stomach, a feeling I couldn't shake. Throughout the week, my younger brother, Ryan, had been sending me unsettling messages that hinted at something being amiss. Initially, I dismissed his concerns, thinking he was just being overprotective. But as I stood there, pouring syrup over the golden pancakes, doubts began to creep in. I recalled the last few months, Amanda's late nights spent working, and the distant look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. The excitement I felt earlier morphed into a gnawing anxiety. As I prepared for the day, I tried to push the feeling of dread aside. I chose her favorite outfit, laid it out on the bed, and made sure everything was perfect. Yet, as I got dressed, the whispers of discontent continued to grow louder. At work, I had overheard rumors about Amanda being seen with another man, and the weight of those words felt like a leaden anchor dragging me down. My excitement had turned into a pit of anxiety, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was teetering on the edge of something terrible. Finally, I could no longer ignore the gnawing doubt that had festered within me. I had to confront Amanda. I waited for her to come home, my heart racing with each passing minute. When she finally walked through the door, her smile felt forced, and I sensed the tension crackling in the air. I gathered my thoughts, bracing myself for what I needed to say. "Amanda," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "I found something in your purse." I pulled out the keychain, a small trinket that didn't belong to me. "Can you explain this?" "Just tell me the truth," I interrupted, my heart pounding. "Are you seeing someone else?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the internal struggle within her, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Yes, I am," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's Joshua. He can offer me things you can't." Those words pierced through me like a dagger. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the very foundation of my life crumbling. "But we had plans, Amanda. We were supposed to celebrate our love today." My voice cracked, the pain spilling over. What should have been an anniversary celebration transformed into a painful confrontation. We stood surrounded by memories of our decade together, yet all I could feel was the weight of her betrayal. I contemplated the future of our marriage, wondering if there was any way to rebuild what had been lost. Joseph listened patiently, offering support and perspective. "You need to focus on yourself, Diego. Channel this pain into something productive. Don't let her choices define you." His words resonated deeply within me, igniting a spark of determination that I desperately needed. That's when I made the decision to start my own company. I poured every ounce of pain into my work, using it as fuel to drive my ambition. I envisioned a future where I could reclaim my identity, separate from the shadows of Amanda's betrayal. It was a daunting prospect, but I was ready to face it head-on. As I began to build my new venture, I found myself in a situation I never expected. I needed an assistant, someone reliable and efficient, to help me navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship. In a twist of fate, I made the audacious choice to hire Joshua. Working alongside the man who had taken my wife was a daily confrontation. Every day in the office was a reminder of my past, yet in that discomfort, I found unexpected strength. The tension was palpable, but it fueled my determination to rise above my pain. Each encounter with Joshua was a reminder of who I was and who I wanted to become. As I navigated the complexities of my new life, I found solace in the idea that I could rebuild not just my career, but also my sense of self. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to forge a path forward, one that would lead me to a place of healing and empowerment. I had turned my pain into purpose, and in that process, I found hope. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself entrenched in a tumultuous mix of emotions. The office, once a place of camaraderie, had transformed into a battleground of silent tension. Joshua, the man who had taken my wife, was now my assistant. Every interaction was laced with unspoken words, a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger whenever I looked at him, yet I also recognized that my decision to hire him was a conscious choice to confront my pain head-on. One chilly November morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The sun barely peeked through the clouds, casting a gray hue across the city. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the screen, my mind swirling with thoughts. It was then that I heard the familiar sound of Joshua entering the office. His footsteps echoed in the silence, and I felt an involuntary tension rising within me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was in control of my emotions. "Morning, Diego. Joshua said, his tone casual, as if we were just colleagues sharing an ordinary day. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Morning, Joshua." As we settled into our respective tasks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. There was a new energy in the office, a sense of urgency that hadn't been there before. I glanced over at Joshua, who was engrossed in his work, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of determination in his eyes. It was a reminder that he was not just the man who had betrayed me, he was also a professional, trying to navigate his own challenges. "Diego," Joshua called out, breaking the silence, "I think we need to discuss our upcoming project. We have a tight deadline, and I want to make sure we're aligned." His voice was steady, but I could sense an underlying tension. I nodded, pushing aside my personal feelings to focus on the task at hand. "Sure, let's go over the details." As we dove into the project, I realized that working together was forcing me to confront not only my feelings about Joshua, but also my insecurities about my own capabilities. I had spent so long wallowing in my heartbreak that I had forgotten the drive and ambition that had once defined me. With each passing moment, I felt a flicker of the old Diego returning, a man who was capable of rising above adversity. The days turned into a blur of meetings, brainstorming sessions, and late nights spent working side by side. Joshua was efficient and dedicated, qualities I couldn't overlook. He brought a fresh perspective to our work, and despite the circumstances, I found myself appreciating his contributions. It was a complicated feeling, one that forced me to confront the duality of my emotions. I was both grateful for his help and resentful for his role in my personal life. One afternoon, as we reviewed our progress, Joshua casually mentioned Amanda. "I ran into Amanda the other day," he said, his tone light. My heart sank at the mention of her name. "Oh, how is she?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She seemed, well, she looked good," he replied, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. I felt a pang of jealousy mixed with an odd sense of relief. "Good for her," I said, forcing the words out. It was strange to hear about Amanda from Joshua, the man who had come between us. The past few weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions, and this was just another twist in the tale. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my office, I reflected on the choices I had made. I had taken a leap of faith by hiring Joshua, and in doing so, I had forced myself to confront my pain instead of running from it. I realized that my journey wasn't just about overcoming the betrayal. It was about reclaiming my identity and building something meaningful from the ashes of my past. Over the following weeks, I began to see the fruits of our labor. The project we were working on was gaining momentum, and our collaboration was yielding impressive results. I found myself looking forward to our brainstorming sessions, where ideas flowed freely and we challenged each other creatively. In those moments, I could almost forget the complicated history that bound us. Then came the day of our big presentation. We had poured our hearts into this project, and the stakes were high. As we stood in front of the board, I felt a sense of camaraderie with Joshua that I hadn't anticipated. We were no longer just a man who had taken my wife and the man who had been betrayed. We were colleagues united in a common goal. After the presentation, I felt a rush of adrenaline and relief. We had done it. As we exited the conference room, I turned to Joshua, a genuine smile on my face. "We make a good team," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. He smiled back, and for a brief moment, the tension between us seemed to dissipate. In the days that followed, I found myself at a crossroads. The emotional turmoil I had experienced was slowly transforming into a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my life, and while the scars of betrayal remained, they no longer defined me. I had learned to channel my pain into productivity, and it was liberating. With each passing day, I became more resolute in my decision to move forward. I had built a foundation for my company, and the future looked promising. I realized that the journey was not just about revenge or bitterness, it was about growth, healing, and self-discovery. As I stood at my desk one evening, looking out at the city skyline, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shadows of my past were still there, but they no longer held power over me. I was Diego, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger on the other side. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. The office was unusually quiet that chilly November morning, a stillness that felt heavy with anticipation. I had arrived early, as I often did, trying to find solace in the routine of my work. But today was different. A sense of urgency hung in the air, and I could feel it creeping into my bones. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the screen, my mind racing with thoughts that I couldn't quite grasp. Then I heard the familiar sound of footsteps. Joshua entered the office, and even though we had been working together for weeks, the sight of him still stirred a mix of emotions within me. He greeted me casually. "Morning, Diego." I forced a smile as I replied, "Morning, Joshua." The tension was palpable, but I had learned to mask it behind a facade of professionalism. As the morning progressed, we dove into our upcoming project, the one that had taken up much of our time and energy. It was supposed to be a fresh start for me, a chance to reclaim my identity after Amanda's betrayal, but working with Joshua was a constant reminder of the past I was trying to escape. I pushed those feelings aside and focused on the task at hand. "We need to finalize our strategy for the presentation next week," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Joshua nodded, his brow furrowing in concentration. "Absolutely. I think we should emphasize our unique approach to the problem," he suggested, his voice steady. I admired his dedication, even if it was difficult to separate the man from the circumstances that had brought us together. We worked side by side, exchanging ideas and refining our plans, but the underlying tension remained, simmering just beneath the surface. Then, out of the blue, Joshua said something that caught me off guard. "You know, I ran into Amanda the other day." The mention of her name sent a jolt through me, and I felt my heart race. "Oh, how is she?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. "She seemed, well, she looked good," he replied, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. A mix of emotions surged within me, jealousy, anger, and an odd sense of relief. I forced a response through clenched teeth. Good for her. The conversation shifted back to our project, but my mind was elsewhere. How could I be working with the man who had taken my wife? I had made the conscious decision to hire Joshua, to confront my pain head-on instead of running from it, but every mention of Amanda felt like a fresh wound. I could see Joshua trying to navigate his own feelings about the situation, and it was a complicated dance we were engaged in. As the days turned into weeks, I began to notice a change. The project we were working on was gaining momentum, and our collaboration was yielding impressive results. I found myself looking forward to our brainstorming sessions, where ideas flowed freely and we challenged each other creatively. Despite the circumstances, I began to appreciate Joshua's contributions. It was a strange feeling, one that forced me to confront the duality of my emotions. I was both grateful for his help and resentful for his role in my personal life. Then came the day of our big presentation. We had poured our hearts into this project, and the stakes were high. As we stood in front of the board, I felt a sense of camaraderie with Joshua that I hadn't anticipated. We were no longer just a man who had taken my wife and the man who had been betrayed. We were colleagues united in a common goal. The presentation went smoothly, and as we exited the conference room, I turned to Joshua, a genuine smile on my face. "We make a good team," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. He smiled back, and for a brief moment, the tension between us seemed to dissipate. But just as I began to feel a sense of relief, the past crept back in. The day after our successful presentation, I received an unexpected call from Amanda. "Diego, can we talk?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I hesitated, my heart pounding. "What do you want, Amanda?" I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I just want to explain myself," she said, her voice shaky. "I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to process her words. "You made your choice, Amanda. You left me for Joshua," I said, my voice steady but laced with pain. "What more is there to say?" She paused, and I could hear the regret in her silence. "I just wanted you to know that I realize now what I lost," she finally said. "I've been thinking about us a lot." The conversation left me reeling. I had worked so hard to move on, to build my life anew, yet here was Amanda reaching out, stirring up emotions I thought I had buried. I hung up the phone, feeling a wave of confusion wash over me. I had poured my heart into my work and had begun to find a sense of purpose, but the past was not done with me yet. The next day, I arrived at the office with a heavy heart, unsure of what to expect from Joshua. As we settled into our routine, I found myself avoiding his gaze, the weight of Amanda's call lingering in my mind. Eventually, Joshua broke the silence. "Is everything okay, Diego?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I hesitated before replying, "I spoke with Amanda yesterday." His expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and apprehension crossing his features. "What did she say?" I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tension return. "She wants to talk. She seems to regret her decision," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Joshua's eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see the tension in his posture. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his tone surprisingly gentle. I was taken aback by his empathy. "I don't know," I replied, my voice trembling. "I've worked so hard to rebuild my life. I thought I was moving on." Joshua nodded, understanding the complexity of my emotions. "You deserve happiness, Diego, whatever that looks like for you," he said, his sincerity shining through. In that moment, I realized that, despite the pain of betrayal, I had found an unexpected ally in Joshua. We were both navigating the fallout of choices made, and perhaps there was room for understanding amidst the chaos. As the day wore on, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I would face Amanda, not as a broken man, but as someone who had risen from the ashes. I had built something meaningful with my work, and I wasn't going to let the past dictate my future. I would confront my feelings head-on, not just for Amanda, but for myself. In the days that followed, I prepared for my conversation with Amanda, knowing that it was time to reclaim my narrative. I had transformed my pain into purpose, and it was time to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time. I was Diego, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, and I would not let the shadows of my past define me any longer. Weeks had passed since that fateful conversation with Amanda, and I found myself settling into a new routine at the office with Joshua. The initial tension had morphed into a professional camaraderie that surprised me. We had become a formidable team, navigating projects and deadlines with a mutual respect that had grown out of our shared experiences. Amanda's presence still lingered like a shadow in the background, but I was learning to compartmentalize my feelings. On a particularly crisp morning, as I prepared for another day of work, I received a message from Amanda. "Can we meet?" it read. My heart raced. The last time we spoke, she had expressed regret, and I had thought we were moving past that chapter. But the thought of seeing her again stirred old emotions. I took a deep breath and responded, "Sure, when and where?" Later that day, I found myself sitting in a small cafe, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air while I waited for Amanda. As I sat there, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I had spent so long trying to move forward, and now here I was, about to confront the very person who had turned my life upside down. When Amanda arrived, she looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her bag. I noticed how the light caught her hair and how she had dressed carefully for our meeting. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, taking a seat across from me. "Let's get to it, Amanda. What did you want to talk about?" I replied, my voice steady even as I felt the weight of the moment. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "About us, about everything. I know I hurt you, and I can't change that. But I want you to know that I've realized how much I took for granted." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "You chose to be with Joshua, Amanda. You made your decision," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But it wasn't what I thought it would be. I thought I wanted excitement, but instead I found emptiness." The honesty in her voice struck a chord within me. I had felt that emptiness too, but I had channeled it into building something new. "And now you want what? Forgiveness? A second chance?" I asked, the bitterness creeping into my tone. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. I miss what we had, and I miss you." Hearing her say those words forced me to confront my own feelings. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of the pain she had caused. But another part of me recognized the growth I had experienced since our separation. I had learned to embrace my strength, to take control of my narrative. "I've been rebuilding my life, Amanda," I said, my voice firm but measured. "I've found purpose in my work and in the relationships I've cultivated since you left. I can't just forget what happened." "I don't want you to forget," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want you to know that I've changed. I don't want to lose you completely." The weight of her words pressed down on me. I had spent so long trying to move on, yet here we were, revisiting a past that was full of pain and betrayal. "What do you want from me?" I asked, feeling a mixture of frustration and confusion. "I want to be a part of your life again. I know it's a lot to ask, but I want to start over, even if it means just being friends," she said, her sincerity evident. I took a deep breath, trying to process her request. "I don't know if I can do that," I admitted, feeling the tension in my chest. "I've worked hard to create distance, to heal. Jumping back into a friendship with you feels like a step backward." "I understand," she replied, her voice tinged with disappointment. "But I had to try. I had to let you know how I feel." As we sat in silence, I realized that this conversation was about more than just us. It was about healing, growth, and the choices we make. I had come to terms with my pain and had learned to embrace the future without her. "I appreciate your honesty, Amanda," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I need to focus on my life now. I can't let the past dictate my future." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, understanding the finality in my words. "I get it. I just hope one day you can forgive me." As she stood to leave, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had faced my past and emerged stronger, but the journey was not over. I had learned valuable lessons about love, betrayal, and self-discovery. Weeks later, back in the office with Joshua, I reflected on my conversation with Amanda. Joshua noticed my contemplative mood. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Yeah," I replied, a small smile creeping onto my face. "I just had a conversation with Amanda. It was enlightening." Joshua raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "What happened?" I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief. She apologized. She wants to start over, but I told her I needed to focus on my own life. Joshua nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. "That sounds like a healthy decision, Diego. You've come a long way." As we dove back into our work, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The past was still there, but it no longer held power over me. I was ready to embrace the future, to build a life that was truly my own, one step at a time.